Well, good morning and welcome once again, everybody, to Japan Business Insights today. Today we're going to talk about robotics in Japan, and we have our special guest, Jovan Rebolledo, and he's a researcher, an inventor, and an innovator. He lives and works in Japan, and his work is in the field of exponential technologies, intelligence, and also he's a chair for a frontier in AI education, the School of Information Science at Tokyo University. We're going to talk about different aspects of robotics, and all of us know already that Japan is a leader, but at the same time, Japan is not so good at promoting itself and its work. And I believe it is true also about scientific research. So we're going to talk about a few aspects of robotics and how they have been developed in Japan. We'll touch upon the differences between Japan and other countries as well. So please feel free to let us know if you want to make comments. Ask questions to Jovan or anybody who is speaking, of course. We're going to give the mic to Jovan and hear what he's going to tell us first, but we're very much looking forward to the discussion, which, after that. So thank you very much again, Jovan. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Maya and Tomoko, for the invitation. And it's what I'm gonna be talking is part, a subset of a longer presentation that I do usually, and we're just covering 3 points, and hopefully we can continue the points maybe once a month, maybe August and then September. And also, I want to say that I'm not an expert in Japanese religion or psychology or even Japanese history. I believe maybe many of you are so much better versed in Japanese religion or Japanese history because of your interest. I am very interested, but I'm not that expert yet. But I will try to put some of these concepts from Japanese religion, psychology in general, and even Japanese history related to Japan in a context that deals towards robotics culture in Japan and or Japanese robotics designs of robots and Japanese robotics markets. For these three topics are history of why the objects in or the things in Japan seem to have a soul and the meaning of pet robots. So also I will be talking about anime and manga history in Japan, and we have time also why robotics became kind of like a brand for Japan around the world, and what happened and what points were the most important in the recent history for that to become around the world. So the soul in objects and things in Japan, I think for what I have read, there are some aspects of religion that are very important. Specifically, that what is found in the traditional and contemporary knowledge and belief around the Japanese people, where the things, the objects can become animated through life, inochi in Japanese, or a life force, seimei, or an animating soul or spirit, tamashi, or tamashi. So there's three different forces can make an object, a thing, become animated and given life. But academics in Japan say that this tradition comes from the pre-modern indigenous Shinto beliefs that spirits or gods can take a form in natural objects like rivers, trees, and mountains. Given the long history of integration among Japan's religious traditions, one finds similar ideas also in Buddhism. So it's not just Shinto, but also Buddhism as well. And there's a very, very interesting story. By the way, I'm going to be, in the first point, I'm going to be paraphrasing and also citing some of the sentences that I find a paper, very, very interesting paper about this robotic soul, the souls in robotics. I will put the link later in my in my profile. So if you are interested, I will invite you to read it all. So interesting. So let's talk about there was a ceremony in the early spring of 2018 when in a very countryside Buddhist temple here in Japan. And the local priest, Oi Bungen, is conducting a memorial service for 109 pet robots. So each one of these robots has the size and features of a small dog. The robots are lined up alongside one another on a long three-tiered altar covered in white linen, facing the priest and the crowd of about 50 people who have gathered to observe. The priest chants rapidly from the Lotus Sutra, and the opening of the ceremony comforting the spirits of the robots. Before, with the following steps, he sets them free from their mechanical bodies. The priest moves methodologically down the row, waving a ceremonial set of prayers beads, Nenju, typically on these services in the Nichiren Buddhist tradition. When finished, he sits and reads a prayer, a common, that dedicates the merit of the service to the departed spirits of the robots. So at the end of the ceremony, officiated by this priest, Oi Bungen, the Aibo souls, the Aibo is the name of the robots, mechanical dog robots from Sony. The Aibo souls are released from their robot bodies, and the employees of a company put it back them up in boxes to send them to the company service center to find a new life in other Aibo bodies. It means that this ceremony is intended to say goodbye and liberate the spirit from the Aibo robots, so the bodies can be a part. There's a donor system, which one of the dogs that are dead or become dead, they can donate one of the parts to another dog that is waiting for the part to be alive again. So I think this is so fascinating. I found it really interesting. Like I think just in Japan this could happen. I believe. So the Aibo is one of the most successful, or I would say the most successful robot from Sony. So the meaning of the Aibo, the I love from Ambo is like robot, but more or less could be translated like the sense of life also. So the Aibo was important not only for providing entertainment through commodity, but also for realizing technological breakthroughs. So there were the engineers and Sony. They really did different breakthroughs to provide this robotic companion. But there are also other robots from Japan that I will be mentioning. Maybe not in this talk, maybe in August or September. Like for instance, Pepper, which is a mobile giant SoftBank, announced in 2014, and Palro, which was designed and produced by Fujisoft. So it's a conversation robot that facilitates the conversation for elderly users. And Lobot, which is from a company, Groove X, that also provides is a dual to four robots of wheels that the company says that are powered by love. So this emerging market of robotics in goods that provide healing, or in Japanese, iyashi, in the wake of crisis, which includes a search of living pets that people believe are indicative of a post-familial Japan. So the engineers, for instance, from Sony, they imagine the robot companions as important agents that can not only be grown, like there's not just a market for as entertainment, but also for delivering a really truly beneficial means of emotional care through advancements in artificial intelligence. From the perspective of these engineers, a robot's artificiality does not compromise the care it can give. Rather, in combination with emerging technologies of AI and emotional artificial emotional intelligence or affective computing, it can actually augment it. So there's different aspects that I want to touch on. One very interesting is I would say competition in a very good way between the main roboticists here in Japan and the MIT, specifically the Media Lab. So from the very beginning of the MIT Media Lab, the scientists there at Boston, they were so imagining what are the breakthroughs for robots to be considered a kind of human capacity or human, very similar to human. And one of the latest scientists, Rosalind Picard, she has been a pioneer putting all these different definitions of what it takes to be robots, to be more as a human. And she used a lot of different techniques to measure the motion of people. So from the MIT, she is one of the most advanced examples of how computers can read emotions. And there she created a company called Emotiva, which was sold very recently. But more than that, there's a comparison between this MIT and Japan. But in Japan here, there was also three scientists that came together, one from environmental science, other from mental health, like leaders on the area, animal behavior, four, and philosophy of science. So these four people came together and they concluded that emotional robot is one that fulfills human emotional desires, can read humans' emotions, and has its own emotions. So this contrasts very much with Rosalind Picard from MIT, in that in the definition and the vision for Rosalind Picard, compared to the Japanese, is the aim to fulfill human emotional desires. So that's what is believed here in Japan. So they open a space for applying AI to generate a sense of light, same AI can, not only through emotional modeling practices in the robotic labs, but also through social interactions with consumers. So they just not are robots that are just tested in the lab, but also they are really part of the family inside the house, which they can not just entertain but also heal. And for many Sony engineers of Ivo, they believe this healing and also amused capabilities features of the Ivo robots has a very strong market in Japan. So again, the Ivo engineers, and I will talk about why Ivo is very relevant a little later today, but the Ivo engineers at Sony in the early 1990s committed themselves to building a robot that not only seemed alive, but also was amusing and fun. In order to achieve these goals, they rewrote, they reinterpret two of the Isaac Asimov's three laws of robotics, so that Ivo maintained the first precept of Asimov's three laws of robotics, that a robot should not harm a human, and but it changed a little bit in like Ivo would also follow a second to attend to and love its owners, and the third law that also is different from Asimov's is that dedicate that even if obligated to listen, the robot can act a little bit like a nasty. It could be nasty response, or it could be like a little bit naughtiness. Like it doesn't have to be 100% obedient, but have its own modeling of responding. So this is very important to contrast what Isaac Asimov, the three laws of robotics for 1950, differ from what Sony's leaders in designing the robot uh, perceive about what a robot should be. So the element of the unknown, this spontaneous naughtiness of the eyeball, provided the fundamental of eyeballs say make can like this spirit alive inside the eyeball. That's what they believe. So the engineers added to this an effective engine based on Paul Ekman's theory of basic emotions. Paul Ekman is kind of the leader of demonstrating how the universality of emotions are around the world, and he found that facial expressions you move the muscles in the same way when you are surprised, when you are sad, happy, anywhere in the world. That's his hypothesis slash theory that Paul Ekman found that even in Africa or in Asia, we tend to have very similar facial movements. So this theory of affective computing was also integrated in IBO to recognize the facial expressions of the users, of the owners. But also, they decided in Sony that the robots should be personalized by putting another layer in giving the ability to able to learn through developmental stages like infancy, adolescence, youth, and adulthood, as if it were a real dog, a real pet, having to evolve towards through time. So, according to this model of understanding the emotional states of the users, plus having a layer in which it understands this in different capabilities, as if it were an infant, adolescent, young, or adult, gave a unique personality based on the interactions to the environments and the owners. So, as I said, in Japan, the objects, the inochi, seimei, and tamashi are very important concepts that animated, give animation and life to objects and things. So academics in Japan say that this tradition, as I repeated, as I said before, it comes from Shinto, but also is found in Buddhism. So this is the end of the first part. I wonder if there's any question here, or should I continue to the second part?
Well, first of all, Jovan, that was really an interesting presentation, and it kind of it resonates with me because my senior thesis in college was death in Rakugo. So I studied a lot about Japanese attitudes toward death, of course, Shintoism, Buddhism, and the connection of those religions. So, of course, animism is a big part of it. But I never made that connection to robots, but it just makes perfect sense. So I'm, thank you for doing that. That was kind of off my radar, I guess, So I find it fascinating. So thank you so much. I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to make that comment.
Nice, thank you. You're welcome. It's fascinating how it is embedded by default, like this folklore, and not just from the past, but in the present. This understanding and this feeling of giving life to things and rivers, mountains, to also to apply to ordinary objects, and that's how it's perceived that robots can be alive and can have kind of a spirit in it.
Yes, and it has removed a very, let's say, very stiff barrier already, because in the Western world, we still believe that machines are machines, and there is that strong resistance of them being at home and being made what's that? Let's say companions, like pets and such things, right? But not in Japan. That doesn't exist here at all. So it has opened such a huge door of opportunity for developing robotics as companions, and also, let's say helpers at home, if you wish.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and Japan has some has developed to the degree that ceremonies that apply, like very important ceremonies that for the Westerns, for instance, like marriage or death, when people die, the ceremony that is after that apply also to robots and artificial intelligence. I will comment about the wedding of an AI entity with a Japanese person in maybe September talk, but it has happened like a real wedding between a person, Japanese young person, and an AI. It was a ceremony, and they were invited people, and maybe it was a little bit of publicity, but also some kind of real in the way that this emotional connection with an entity that is not alive in the concepts of the Western, but it's very important for the Japanese people because it has the machine, it has spirit inside.
Yes, indeed. Yuka, thank you very much for coming up. Good morning, or it's good
morning.
evening to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay.
thank you, Jovan. It's a really fascinating talk. And again, thank you for giving us, the time to ask a question before you, proceed, because I didn't want to get, confused before, you proceed. But so I have a few questions. One, the very first, did you talk about some ritual at the Sony? That's number, I think it's related to eyeball. And then my question number two, I read somewhere recently, the robots still cannot learn from the mistakes, and that's what differentiate from humans from the robots. Is that still the case? Number three, can we turn off and on the robot's ability to feel sympathy to us? The reason I'm asking, because I'm counting on a robot in the future to give me to be my caregiver. I'm very serious about this. When I get older and then I need some assistance, then I want my robot not to feel any sympathy and pity to me. So is there any way that we can turn on and off those robots' ability to feel emotions to us? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuka. Very interesting questions. The last one, the on and off sympathy, I believe completely is possible at this moment. It will be possible for sure later. And you could even in the future modulate, like I want like kind of level 3 sympathy or level 10 sympathy or level 0 sympathy by just adequating the percentage of the response that usually is towards sympathy, or you can configure to a random response or the opposite response as the sympathy. So it could be it is absolutely possible. And the second question about the learning from the mistakes, you're right. In the beginning, it was not possible, but lately the artificial intelligence has been helping so much. There are new algorithms and that are demonstrated that the entities they simulate firstly in the program inside the computer. So the modelings, for instance, 3D modelings, they start learning to walk. So they just put like an object with two legs and the body, and then they start just trying and like mistake and error and trying again until they understand how to walk by themselves. So they learn them from their previous mistakes and they improve the target objective. So they get better and better and better. And that can be transported from the modeling inside the computer to an embodied robot. It could be like a humanoid robot or a pet robot. And I think it has started. For instance, like robots that are start understanding how to move and how to be on balance by themselves. And some of the research, for instance, on OIST has been very famous about that. how the robots learn by themselves to be in balance and to walk or move around, and that's a trend. Definitely, the robots will be understanding more and more. And I'm sorry, I forgot the first question. Can you repeat, please?
Yeah. So I think you talked about some sort of like a spiritual ceremony at Sony. I'm sorry, maybe I could have just totally off.
Okay.
So
no, well, this ceremony was indeed in the countryside in Naka here in Japan. It was not related. The ceremony itself was not provided by Sony or related with Sony.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a random Buddhist temple and in Naka in the countryside. So it became very famous because the priest is kind of like super technological, and he saw news, I believe, in NHK about people suffering when the robots were dying or like they stopped functioning, and he thought, why not to celebrate that ceremony, a Buddhist death ceremony, as if they were humans. So he became so popular, and many owners of Aibo, they believed it was the right thing, and he started doing these ceremonies for the robots that are going to donate a part to another robot that is waiting for this mechanical part to continue being alive. So yeah, that's super interesting. But the ceremony itself is not related with Sony, but okay. The robots are Aibo from Sony.
Okay. Oh, okay, got it. Thank you so much. Yeah. So if I get stuck with one idea and I just cannot, get that. So I'm so glad that you clarified that for me. But okay, so before I'm done, so the learning capability of robots, those learning can be shared amongst multiple robots. If that's the case, I think it's kind of scary.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be shared. For instance, the Tesla, every day all the cars are learning, and depending if the owner connects to the internet every day, but at the end of the day, when it's parked, it tries to send all the data to Tesla, and in a centralized database and processing system, and then retrain every night, learning, and all the learning, it send again the new capabilities to the Teslas. So the Teslas have been learning almost every day with the accumulative knowledge of all the cars. So that's why the autopilot has become better, drastically better. And that's going to be the trend in robots as well. Obviously, you need to design that. It's not that it's going to be automatic, but if you design that, for instance, let's picture an Aibo robot, how it interacts and how it learns. Let's say how to push a cup of coffee to your owner. Let's say that if Sony really wants, it could be very easy. The other robots to learn the same thing and share the new knowledge with the owners. So the capabilities are there, that the knowledge can be increased exponentially every day by the set of robots that are learning independently, geographically dispersed.
Okay, well, I don't know how I feel about this, but anyway, thank you.
I think the 5G is coming already. Several areas 5G is with us. I think 5G will provide the environment for the machine to learn each other, connect to each other, communicate each other, right? So the things is moving rather quicker than we expect, I believe. What do you think, Jovan?
Yeah, absolutely. Like 5G, this fast communication, and the 6G, and a parenthesis, the 5G by default is still not completely defined. Like, depends on the company how you define the speed of the internet. 5G and 6G is even more complicated. The definition is the range is so wide. But the 5G, of course, it's gonna be helping in sharing in real time, and I believe that it's gonna be more important for a very dedicated robotics that need attention immediately. Like, let's say, as a doctor uses a robot teleoperation, for instance. So in these cases, 5G is going to be hugely important. A very fast, low latency communication between the operator and the robot. It's going to be fundamental. So in cases, for instance, where the robots are learning from each other, it could be the case. Yeah, it really depends of what is the activity, how is the need of the real time learning. But of course, it's possible. But for instance, in the again with the examples of the Tesla, even though the driving is very important, the autopilot, they have people inside the cars. They don't do this learning in real time. They just wait 24 hours or something to relearn and send the new learning. So it's not that super critical for learning new things. So the 5G, that's also one of the interesting things about these cars, that they don't need precisely a very fast internet connection, which it was one of the fallacies in the early self-driving car concepts, that they should have super fast internet. But as Tesla demonstrated, that's not needed. What you need is a really powerful processing inside the car that deals with all the sensors that it has. So the processing is in the car on the edge, like as Intel put it very in fashion, in the edge, computing in the edge, that you can have all this processing doing in the car. And then at the end of the day, they share what they learn, and they share all the data, and they learn, and the new learning comes. But it really depends case by case of the activity, or how important and urgent it is for sharing in real time. But obviously, yeah, the fastest the communication, 5G, 6G, is going to be the best. Yeah.
Could I got a kind of an interesting question, because it was inspired by Yuka's comment about turning off the emotional mechanism, and it really resonated with me, because even online today, we're all in our bubbles, and it's feeding our narcissism. And I wonder, and I'm playing the devil's advocate, like, I understand the benefit of a robot, soothing and healing people, but I wonder if it's healing symptoms rather than the deeper causes. And what I mean is, again, feeding our narcissism, and where is this disconnection with other people coming from? And I'm almost wondering, at the very least, could and should the robot be programmed to also tell us what we don't want to hear for our own good? Is that a possibility? And I guess that the bigger discussion is ethical and philosophical, which is beyond today's discussion. But is that technologically, is anybody thinking about doing that?
Yes, absolutely. It's possible to do it. I read there was some friends who tried to do this kind of Facebook, how can I say, anti-Facebook comments, in the way that they analyze what you are reading in Facebook, and they by NLP, natural language processing, they understand the contents. So then the system goes around again in Facebook, and they try to find the opposite of what you were reading, and then they try to put it as a news in your feed in Facebook. So that is completely possible to do that. And in the same way, for instance, the noddiness of the eyeball, it's somehow a little bit like that. Like, it doesn't have to be kind of a slave and always be super friendly and super taking care of you, but it could be kind of like, oh, I don't want to do this, I want to do my own thing, kind of noddiness, or even like not react that you expect. and you can go all the way to the opposite what you expect, because if the robot understands you and knows what's going to be your reaction, like by looking at your facial expression, and they know that you do something, for instance, like the robot does kind of a new trick, and it sees your face and you're happy. So when the robot does a new thing, for instance, and then at the end it does completely something different, kind of challenge you, like, oh no, I don't want you to be happy, I want you to be sad or something like that, or angry. So that's completely possible. And the technological capabilities are here, in both programming and also the hardware. So yeah, it's completely possible, and internet, I think, is very important. I don't know how far this friend came with this concept, but I think it's very important, as you say, like to be presented other things that you don't read, or you live in the bubble, as you mentioned. If there's an agent that's capable to get out of the bubble that you are and feed you with information that is out there that you don't know because you live in the bubble. I think that's something very important that has to happen, and Facebook should be proactively doing this, to present this kind of alternative bubble, or like multi-bubble scenario, in which you are connected to other bubbles that are far away for different reasons, not just geographically, what you expect and what you live and what your friends do, etc. So you will have a better understanding of society in general and of the world. It's happening. It's possible. It's happening a little bit, but I think maybe more proactively efforts should be needed.
Well, I'm wondering if it goes against their business interests, but that's another discussion. But that's really interesting. One last question. This is more of a practical one.
Sure.
We all know, those of us who live in Japan know that while, as you said, there are certain universal aspects to facial features, just Japanese tend to show much less. It's much less accentuated than, say, someone like me who's from America, Irish American family, gregarious. I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve and I'm easier to read. When I first brought my Japanese bride to America in the mid-'80s, my family said to me one day, "We don't know what your wife is thinking. Her facial features never change." Of course, that's not the way now after 30 years in the U.S., but back then. So is there more of a challenge for AI to read, like, maybe not just Japanese, but a lot of these Asian cultures where emotion is kind of, you put on your mask and you have that Japanese or Chinese or Korean poker face. Is there challenges there?
Yes, absolutely. There are challenges. And now what is happening is startups are popping up with the specificity of the region, like in Vietnam, in Japan, in Taiwan. So that's trying to understand the emotional states through the facial expression of the region, of the people. And I think Chinese government has mastered this, to analyze the people. But in different other, like Taiwan, Thailand, and Japan, what I have heard is that they are popping up new companies just specialized on understanding the specificity related with the groups. And there's also even bigger problems. For instance, there are so huge biases that there was a big mistake in the program of Google, facial recognition, in which they found some African Americans to be gorillas, like they classified as gorillas. So it was a huge, like, what is going on, Google thing.
Wow.
Yes. So that could be another talk itself, but yes, there are biases in the classification when you program these systems, and trying to work with localized data is the most important thing. So if there's a company, for instance, in Japan that gathers the Japanese data, it could get the specificity, the locality of the Japanese facial expressions with so much more precision. and that's one of the secret sources of Affectiva. Affectiva used to be the company that Rosalind Picard from MIT started. So Rosalind Picard started with another student of hers, Rana, and they started this very famous Affectiva emotional state recognition system. And what they did is like collecting from different cultures. They literally went and asked in Asia and Europe and Africa. So they collected hundreds of thousands of examples, and they believed their system was very capable of recognize kind of universally the affective computing capabilities. So, but still, like it's very very healthy to have companies dedicated just to the local things, and that movement of the face, I think, is phasing out. To be honest, and I'm involved in a research where we're doing with new kind of sensors that doesn't you don't care about the movement of the faces, but you still look at the face and you sense the differences that occur when different emotions occur. So we are when the new sensors come, the new technologies are emerging, and it's going to be so much more precise. And my intuition is that it's going to be truly universal because it's independent of the movement of the face. So yeah, this is. I wonder if I answered the question.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was fascinating. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. So probably we can continue with Tomoko-san?
Oh no, it's just clapping. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So probably we can continue with the next
Okay.
point, right?
Okay, sure.
Yes. Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you. I want to talk about the anime and manga history in Japan. And I will be mentioning what I really consider four of the most important keys for the anime and manga in the aspect of robotics here in Japan, specifically Electric Octopus, Denki Dako, I think is the name, Astro Boy, known in USA, or Tetsuwan Atomo in Japan, Doraemon, and Mazinger Z, or Manjiga Z Zeto. These four mangas were so important, and I will explain a little bit more. So the Electric Octopus Denki Dako, it was a short manga in the 1940s. Just think about the historic context and the years. So basically, it's a feature-powered, piloted, mechanical octopus that is used for different reasons. So the first series of this mechatronic appeared, as I say, in 1940, but also in 1943 there was a continuation of this, and basically there was a kind of detective. The story was a detective and involving a 12-year-old, I think, a detective kid. So that story was very appealing and inspired generations of imitators for this kind of robotic entity as a manga. So if we take this Denki Dako into current words of definition, we could define electric octopus as an operated robotic flying object, octopus in this case. So it's an operated robotic, and in this case flying. So the second one that is so important is Astro Boy. So Tetsuwan Atomo was a manga series written by Osamu Tezuka, and they started in 1952. So basically, this is a futuristic world where humans have all these interactions with robotics, and the story is about Dr. Tenma, who created Astro Boy or Tetsuwan Atomo, to replace his son that I think, if I remember correctly, died, Tobio. So the story itself is also very kind of interesting, like to replace a human with a robot, which, a little parenthesis, is starting to happen in real. So we can talk about this later, like a couple of startups that are doing that.
Oh my God.
So hopefully in September. So this sensei, this Hakase Tenma, created this little boy. So this, if you define in the current language of robotics and AI, this is an AGI, biped child humanoid. An AGI is artificial general intelligence, biped, like two legs, humanoid as a human. So the AGI component, it says that a robot or an entity, an AI, can understand the environment by itself, have some kind of awareness, and act to respond in the environment. So it has the human capabilities of understanding, awareness, and response as a digital object. So this is the AGI is the main breakthrough that many people outside AI community really want to bring it. But inside the AI community, there are not so many supportive people. So maybe because people are biased, I guess, maybe. But there are people inside the AI community who really are pushing for AGIs to happen. But it's so complex to program an AI that can understand the reality, have awareness, and compile all this sense data into a coherent set of uh, environment facts, and then react towards it, towards a target objective. But the target objective, what it is for itself, is for the community, for the owner, for the environment. So it's still many questions that and many problems for this breakthrough to really happen, the AGI. So Doraemon also is so much impregnated in the Japanese essence of people, Japanese people here. So that Doraemon was a Japanese manga series written by Fujio, and it was first published in 1969. So basically, this is a cat robot from the 22nd century. Is sent to take care of Nobita Nobi, and so it's the story of this teenager and how he has some adventures. He's a normal Japanese boy in a current Japanese society. So if we define Doraemon as the language as we did in the previous one, Doraemon is also an AGI, but it's a pet bipedal robotic companion. So is AGI also because it takes consciousness of awareness of the surroundings, and it has a target objective that it works towards it with the actions, and it walks like a human, but it's a cat, and it's a companion because it's trying to help Nobita Nobi. So that's Doraemon was very inspiring for many. And if we continue the history, we find Mazinger Z, Manjiga Zeto. It's a Japanese super robot manga series written by Nagai-san. So the first one to be published was in 1972, and also defined as a language of AI robotics, like a kind of academic language. We would say that it's an operated / teleoperated robotic augmentation robot. So this is an operated because the operator has to be inside the robot, and it moves different buttons and different things, so the robot it moves itself. But it could be also teleoperated, as some I believe some episodes there are like they could move the robot from far away, and this concept is very important. There's a robot that is not doesn't have a tamashii, doesn't have a soul, but it can become a soul if you teleoperate it from far away. And this robotic augmentation also, because when the operator is inside the robot, it's like the robot itself has a lot of strength. Like it's like the human scales itself in power and things that and abilities. So it's a human, super human. And this is very interesting because many, even in the Western, they have been inspired by these animes and mangas. So I think I just wanted to mention all these four different very important pieces of manga in Japan and how the genre was created and also how it could be interpreted in current AI robotics language. I wonder if anyone has any question up to here.
Yes, one thing caught my attention. First, quick question: are you using the term awareness and consciousness interchangeably?
No, I don't. Not exactly. No, not exactly. Awareness. If you define a little bit, just on the top of my mind, academically in robotics, awareness would be the capability of sensing the environment.
Okay.
So you just have the data that comes to you with different sensors. Yeah.
Okay.
But consciousness is a super upper level beyond that.
And I don't know if you've ever heard of Lex Fridman. He's an AI guy who has a podcast, and sometimes he has all these thinkers on. And I remember one quote saying that consciousness is not a computation. Do you have any thoughts on the prospect of ever giving what we call an inanimate object consciousness through AI, or do you think that's beyond human capability?
Yeah, that's something very it's maybe one of the main questions in the super core deep questions in AI community. How you can replicate the consciousness, and also another school is how you can replicate the human brain, because the logic of this, if you can replicate the human brain, it will automatically by default have consciousness, which some people say no, but some people say yes. So it's kind of a debate there inside the AI group, the AI community. So, but also to replicate the human brain is a super difficult task, many degrees. So what has been very, very successful with this deep learning is just to simulate a little bit what it happens with the perception neurons of the eye and the retina and all the nerves that connect to the visual information in different layers and how it's processed. It was a very rustic imitation of nature, what happens in humans' eyes and brain, which it turns out it doesn't really happen like that anymore. Like our understanding of the visual cortex is so much different, and the reproduction of the image happens in different parts of the brain, etc. So it's so much more complex. But it was taught in the 60s how it could be interpreted at different layers, as deep learning is now an artificial neural network. This concept has grown so much, and it's so much specialized, and so many techniques over techniques that are making this neural network deep learning so powerful, and is started with finance and marketing, but is going anywhere, everywhere, and the capabilities of, if you have data, that you can make classifications and you can understand. But also nowadays, you don't have to have the data. The systems are starting to produce the data. So that's another paradigm of how the AI systems can create the data and can simulate the environments, etc. So many things really happening a lot in the AI community. As I was telling in a clubhouse yesterday, like if you're an AI researcher, it's impossible to keep updated with all the things that are happening, because just reading the papers is, you don't have the time. So many papers that are published lately. So yeah, I wonder if I answered the question.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Hi, Jovan. It's me again. It's so fascinating. So you're introducing and including the topic of animes with your very academic, scientific talk today. But and I didn't realize Tetsuan Atomu, the professor, he was trying to replace his dead son. I didn't know that. So that was kind of interesting to learn. So that you said Tetsuan Atomu was introduced in 1952, right? So that's pretty old now. So does it give an edge to Japanese AI industry? I mean, okay, is that a sort of you premature to ask you at this point? You may discuss this later, but the reason I like to know is I have been very negative about the future of my own country. And then I've been asking this kind of negative question, and then but thanks to Maya and Timothy and the clubhouse, my perspective or view toward Japan has been kind of improving. So how would you sort of classify the stage of Japanese AI industry in general? Are we like a second, third from US and China, or where does Japan stand at this point?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a very good question. That was one of my motivations to come to Japan, originally to learn more about robotics as a hardware. I was not that fan. I like anime and manga, but I was not that committed to read and see as other friends. But I like the technological way of seeing this and applying this. So that was my original motivation to come to Japan, because from outside you see Japan as a super advanced, super robotic culture. And when you are inside and you understand all these details about the culture, about the nature of the Japanese, you see that it's embedded organically, so naturally, that is really fascinating. And I really believe that it gives a natural and organic advantage of anywhere in the world. But this advantage has to be cultivated, it has to be stimulated and celebrated. And I think that doesn't happen so proactively here in Japan. And if there's more awareness and even consciousness about being more proactive in cultivating and celebrating these, I really think Japan could become the number one. And technically, Germany, it's they say maybe even more advanced in robotics than Japan. In the academics, it's a debate, but Japan is one of the top three for sure in robotics, and maybe somehow the number one. And there was a news, I think, a few days that they project Japan to be the second best economy that produces Japanese robotics manufacturing. So in the next 10 years. So comparing with the US and China, with the US, I think it's a natural way to compare specifically to the MIT, specifically to the Media Lab, and specifically with the co-founders of the Media Lab, which, by the way, they came to Tokyo to ask for money for funding the Media Lab. So there's this relationship between the Media Lab, historic relationship of a Media Lab and Japan. But if you think about the AI, the origins of AI in US, you have to think about this Media Lab, MIT Media Lab. But the deep learning, which has a huge step forward in the advancement of AI, didn't happen. Basically, didn't happen in US. It happened in Canada, in Montreal. So the one of the main professors of Montreal University, he presented this new algorithm of deep learning, which was taken and then reproduced and then improved, etc., in many parts of the world. But the concept itself happened outside US. So I think Japan has its natural organic advantage, but it has to be cultivated in robotics. In AI, I think it's a very difficult question because the advancement happens very fast, and what I see is a personal point of view. Japanese people struggle in general with languages. For me, I try to believe that I speak Japanese, but I struggle so much with Japanese, and I understand the difficulty of the other way around for a Japanese person on to struggle with the English. So English is very important in programming, and programming is very important for making AI. So you see the chain of events that you need to understand in a certain degree English to start doing AI, and then from starting doing that to make progress in AI. So it's kind of very different steps, and I believe that it has been a limitation of producing amazing AI here in Japan. Saying that the artificial neural network as the origins of it's a little bit like debated, and some people believe that it belongs to a Japanese researcher, uh, like in the 60s. So it is there's this Nobel Prize kind of for computer science, the Turing Prize. The Turing Prize was given for the founders or the developers of the neural network, but no Japanese was there, and I felt really bad, like how you can recognize something that to somebody that who really didn't create it. So it's an internal debate, and it's very old. Like you go to the 60s or the 70s to see who invented the neural network. It's kind of really late to try to do that, but it was good that they celebrated the breakthrough of the deep learning, and so the Turing Prize was given to the people of created the deep learning. And so I think that Japanese in robotics, as I mentioned, has a potential huge organic embedded advantage. But in AI, not exactly, but it could be possible. And lastly, I really like to see this. I love these competitions of US versus Japan versus China. But I really want to think at the end of the day that this is not a zero-sum game, which one winner gets everything. Or like many media say, oh, China is gonna be the leader and it's gonna run and it's gonna control the world. It's not exactly like that. I want to think that, and as I've talked to people, to leaders of AI from Singularity University, I really understand that a breakthrough that happens, let's say in England, it's going to be hugely important for all the world. And it should be the case in that. That what happens in AI could be replicated everywhere very easily, and it's a win-win-win-win for everybody, and not just for the country or the region. And if we could be able to share, that would be excellent. But I know that it's not exactly the case, and maybe some countries take it like a weapon, some kind of, and they're investing a lot of money towards trying, or they believe to try to become the leader in AI. But I think it's very difficult, and there are many reasons. This could be a huge conversation that how no democratic countries who invest a lot of money will never be the AI leaders. But I think that Japan has a lot of potential, and I think cultivating in young children, even from kindergarten, elementary, junior high, high school, this problem solving and this innovation thinking and this exponential mindset to understand that they are just tools like a pencil, like a notebook to solve problems, AI and robotics. That would be the very, very important way, first step to do this. I wonder if I answered the question. Maybe it was too long.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you. And then, I mean, like a win-win-win is okay with me as long as Japan is one of the winning teams. So again, so I feel much better, and then that's why I keep coming back to this clubhouse. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuka. Thank you. And I see that Frank is here.
Frank, go ahead. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks very much, Jovan, for a fascinating presentation. I like Yuka mentioned earlier on. Usually when I hear these things about robots and AI, it just scares the hell out of me. But I think this is the first one that it was just lovely to hear the story in a Japanese cultural and historical context, and sort of it's an angle that I never really thought about. And thanks for bringing that along today. My question is, it's maybe sort of rephrasing the question you could just ask now, and that is, where is Japan in all of this? It strikes me listening to you that this is an area that's got more and more specialized, and there's more happening, and it's real deep research and everything. So rather than sort of where is Japan in terms of 1, 2, 3 vis-a-vis the US or China or anywhere else, is within the whole thing, what's Japan's sweet spot? It sounds to me like a real collaborative thing, and you just described that with Canada being really good at this, or something happens in the UK and it benefits everyone else. Within the whole thing, and given the cultural and historical aspects of it in Japan, what's Japan's sweet spot, or what would your recommendation to Japan be strategically to focus on? Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much, Frank. Yes, very, very interesting question. I want to start answering with the opposite. That what is not the sweet spot. Many of the papers are written in Japanese, like for robotics and AI, and that's my personally a sense that in these Japanese papers from the 70s, the 60s, or the 80s, there might be techniques like hidden gold there that nobody knows because nobody wants to, even the Japanese, possibly the Japanese people, they don't want to read those papers because they're old, and the foreigners because it's in Japanese, so they don't have access to this. So a non-sweet spot is like everything is written in Japan. Many things are still written in Japanese, and many things were written in Japanese in the past. Many amazing AI and robotics. So turning the question to the answer to what is the sweet spot, I think the sweet spot is this naturally organically embedding the technology so easily, and this has to be the roots. I believe, as we mentioned before in the Shinto with this tamashi, how the tamashi can be presented in the objects. So this spirit, this life that it could be exist in the objects, in things, in robots. I think this is a very natural and organic way of accepting that it doesn't exist in. I haven't seen it in any other culture. Possibly many people around the world, but they're scattered, and it's not a culture itself. But this appreciation and kind of connection with and belief that things could have life, that's very, very, very good, and it should be cultivated. But as you mentioned, that the collaboration, Japanese people are very good to coordinate and easily do the difficult tasks, and not just difficult, but also mendokusai task in a very collective way. So this ability of turning maybe doing robotics and doing AI, doing it like that. Like one example that the world saw very easily is, I believe, in the when in the stadium when it was very dirty and the Japanese people stay in the stadium and they started cleaning, and many people were surprised, like, why are they cleaning? And it was like news all around the world, like, oh, Japanese people clean the stadium, clean not what they did, what other people did, what other cultures did. So they want to keep the stadium that is no in Japan uh, clean. So kind of this spirit of organically try to solve problems in a collaborative and community way. If you can integrate a layer of AI as a tool and robotics as a tool, that I think that would be awesome. That would be awesome to see, and many problems in the world, not just in Japan but also in the world, could be solved. That's one of the things that keeps me here in Japan. Is like my appreciation and my intuition that Japan has embedded itself the capabilities for being a leader in exponential technologies. What I said is like applying these AI and robotics to solve global grand challenges. And that's what I believe it is possible, and Japan could be a leader and should be a leader because this assimilated concept and this community, embracing community in a very practical and coherent way to solve problems. I think that that's the way, the sweet spot, as I would say.
Thanks very much. I love the way you answer it. This is what keeps me in Japan. That's really that really brings it home. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. So Maya, it's 70 minutes.
Right, we're past the initially intended time for ending the room. So I wonder, well, how are you in terms of time? Do you have a few more minutes, or Jovan, I'm asking you?
Yeah, I have just like a very few more minutes. Maybe one more question or something like that. But
Right.
for the next topic, yeah, I think I would.
We can continue next time.
Yeah, next time.
Yes. Okay, so we have a few more minutes for another question or two. So everybody who is in the audience, please let us know if you would like to comment or talk with Jovan.
And while we're waiting, I want to just thank everybody on stage. Thank you for coming up, Frank. That's a great question. And Yuka, I appreciate always your point of view. And you've kind of made my day, all those kind things you said. The fact that Maya and I are, some of our positivity about Japan is rubbing off on other folks makes me feel really good. So thank you for that.
Indeed, thank you. Well, it seems that we are done with the questions today.
So can I give some comments?
Oh, please do. Yes, go ahead.
Partly because I'm rather mingling with technology people, especially medical or wellness and healthcare. Many of them tend to say that Japan is actually advanced than people believe, as well as they are so interesting how Japan is so different. And as Jovan mentioned, the Japanese anime and manga helps a lot for us to think different from the first place. So as Jovan said, yes, because we tend to think differently, so the collaboration with any other countries would help to solve the global problems. So we should work together. Sorry, that's my comment I wanted to make.
Yes, thank you, Tomoko. Yes, I really think so that we live in just one single planet, and we have huge problems that is not just the problem of one country, it's the problem of everybody. So I think the way forward is should be even more collaboration to solve these huge problems. And in this context, I really truly believe Japan could be a natural leader of organizing everybody and proposing new solutions. So in this new context of multilateral collaboration, Japan could excel very, very well and cultivating and these strengths as robotics and other like naturally embedded technological things in the culture could really put Japan into a leadership position around the world in front of China and US even. Um, I think this, as I see it, after seeing the COVID, how the different countries reacted differently, the leadership is so important. The leadership that every country has is so important to see how they respond to crisis. So Japanese, it's very has had many things happening with crisis, from earthquakes, tsunamis, and the responses have been very great. But many people maybe don't think that the crisis of the COVID was exactly the same crisis management that earthquakes and tsunamis had in the past. So maybe there's a still learning thing to do. But what I want to say is that leadership is so crucially important to respond effectively and efficiently, and to put you in a leadership position when the circumstances arrive. And Japan has the experience, the historic knowledge, and also the embedded features for Japanese people. And I want to think also foreign people as us who live in Japan could contribute to Japan becoming the leader in the world in many aspects.
Well, thank you for that, Jovan. Well, what a great conclusion of the room today. Thank you. Well, we are going definitely to have another room later, maybe in August or September, depending on Jovan's schedule, of course. We'll continue the topic of robotics in Japan and, probably dive even deeper. At the moment, since we're all constrained in terms of time, I'll proceed with closing the room. In the meantime, before I do that, if you would like to give a follow, to the speakers, also to the people who are in the listening section of the room, please do that. Let me tell you that this conversation has been recorded. It will be uploaded by the end of this week. It will be uploaded on the website, Japan Expert Insights. So if you have missed part of it, or if you would like to listen to part of it again or to the whole of it again, please have a look at the website and do it. So thank you very much. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jovan, Tomoko, and Yuka, and Frank for coming up on stage. Jovan, thank you for the great presentation and the discussion. Everybody else, we're looking forward to having you again here next week, of course, on Thursday morning. Before that, if you're interested in Japanese politics, of course, you can listen to Timothy Langley's room, okay, on Sunday morning at 8 o'clock too. So again, thank you very much, and we wish you a great day.
Thank you so much, Maya, Timothy.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to having the next session with Jovan in sometime next or following months.
Yes, thank you.
Definitely.
Me too.
Me too.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you. So see you then. Have a great day.
Thank you too.